The moment I stepped into the community hall beside my auntie, the air felt electric with expectation. Chandeliers glowed overhead, voices layered together in polished laughter, and for a brief second, I believed this night would finally give her what she deserved. She was the guest of honor. I reminded myself of that as we walked forward, her arm lightly hooked through mine, my heart swelling with pride. Then I felt it shift. Her simple, modest dress didn't blend into the room. It stood apart. Heads turned, not with admiration, but with thinly veiled judgment. Eyes traveled over her fabric, her shoes, her unadorned elegance, and I could almost hear the verdict forming before a single word was spoken. A woman near the front, draped in designer silk and diamonds, leaned toward her circle and whispered loudly enough to cut through the room. "That's what she wore?" A laugh followed, then another. The sound ricocheted off the walls, sharp and careless. My stomach tightened. The whisper didn't stay a whisper. It moved like a stain, spreading table to table, glance to glance. People leaned closer together, mouths curling, fingers lifting to point. I felt heat rush to my face as if the humiliation were mine too. A camera flash went off. I turned just in time to see a photographer lower his lens, already reviewing the image. My auntie stood alone in the frame, shoulders slightly hunched, hands folded awkwardly in front of her. The photo froze her vulnerability in time, and I knew, without being told, that it would be shared, dissected, laughed at. The event coordinator approached us, smile tight, eyes darting. "We'll, adjust the order a bit," she said, already gesturing toward the stage where someone else was being ushered forward. The spotlight shifted away from my auntie as if she'd suddenly become inconvenient. I looked at her. Her smile, the one she practiced for moments like this, trembled. Her fingers shook as they tightened around her purse, knuckles whitening as though it were the only thing anchoring her to the floor. She didn't speak. She didn't protest. She just stood there, shrinking. I leaned in close and whispered, "It's okay. They're wrong. You belong here." The words sounded hollow even to me, swallowed by the room's low hum of judgment. Someone nearby chuckled and said, "Guess this isn't really her crowd, huh?" It was framed like a joke, harmless on the surface. Phones lifted, screens glowed, people recorded, smiling, capturing her discomfort like entertainment. So, something inside me snapped. I watched as the weight of every stare pressed down on her, bending her dignity inch by inch. She tried to straighten, tried to hold her head high, but the pressure was relentless. Years of quiet strength were being questioned in seconds. Her eyes filled slowly, as if she were fighting the tears with everything she had. One escaped anyway, sliding down her cheek. No one noticed. No one cared, but I saw it. I felt it carve itself into my memory. I stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding, utterly powerless in that moment. And yet, beneath the rage, beneath the helplessness, something else ignited. Hot, focused, unyielding. They had humiliated her in public. And as I looked at my auntie, standing alone under judgment she didn't deserve, I made a silent promise. This would not be the end. I remember her younger days, long before the glittering halls and whispered judgments, when she carried the weight of the world quietly on her shoulders. She was always working, long hours, endless chores, errands that never ended, all to make sure my life ran smoothly, my dreams untouched by struggle. And she never asked for thanks, never claimed a spotlight that was rightfully hers. I had taken it for granted until tonight made it impossible to ignore. Flashes of past humiliations invaded my mind. The subtle sneers at her workplace, the gossip whispered behind her back, the invitations she never received because she didn't fit in. Each memory hit me like a dagger. I had always seen her as unshakable, but now I recognized the years of silent suffering she had carried alone. I remembered the time she tried to blend in, to follow the unspoken rules of social expectation. New clothes, polite conversation, forced smiles. Every effort was met with judgment, dismissive looks, and ridicule. The thought made my blood boil. She had bent over backward to fit a world that refused to accept her. And tonight, it had mocked her again. Her resilience had masked all of the suffering. But now, standing beside her as tears threatened to spill, I finally saw it. The invisible scars of a life spent protecting others while the world overlooked her. She had taught me humility and kindness, even when it meant swallowing her own pain. She had smiled through it all, instilling values I now clutched like armor. I could see it clearly. The way children once laughed at her during my birthday parties, how neighbors whispered behind closed doors, how society rewarded flashy charm and punished genuine authenticity. All of it converged tonight in a single moment of humiliation, yet her quiet endurance had never wavered. Her tears, barely visible yet piercing, reflected decades of this relentless struggle. I felt an unbearable mix of guilt, sorrow, and rage. I clenched my fists, feeling the heat of determination rise inside me. I swore silently, fiercely, that no one, no whispering socialite, no mocking crowd would ever diminish her dignity again. So, this humiliation, however public, would not stand. Not tonight, not ever. I would ensure that the world saw her as I had always known her, strong, honorable, and unstoppable. I didn't sleep that night. The laughter, the glances, the way her hand shook replayed in my head until they hardened into focus. I began gathering proof, not emotion, not outrage, but evidence. Videos from the event surfaced online, clipped and captioned with smug remarks. Social media posts from the same socialites appeared, dripping with arrogance, exposing who they really were when they thought no one was watching. Quiet messages started coming in from insiders who had seen it all and said nothing that night. Now they wanted to talk. As I dug deeper, I noticed something else. Alliances. The people who humiliated her weren't isolated. They protected each other, laughed together, validated each other's cruelty. That realization sharpened my resolve. This couldn't be reckless. It had to be precise. My anger stopped being wild. It became methodical. Every insult, every smirk, every calculated exclusion would be answered, but not privately, publicly, where they felt safest. I went back to the hall 2 days later and found the photographer. I kept my voice calm, my expression unreadable. "I need the photo you took of my auntie," I said. He hesitated, then shrugged, unaware of its value to me. When I walked away with that image, I felt the first shift of power. He never realized what he'd handed over. At home, I researched obsessively. Reputations, old controversies, buried complaints, nothing dramatic on its own, but together they formed a pattern. The same people who mocked simplicity curated fake perfection. Their confidence was built on fragile ground. At the same time, I began documenting her life. Not opinions, facts, her years of work, her contributions, the sacrifices no one ever applauded. I assembled everything carefully, building a portfolio that didn't exaggerate a single detail. The contrast between who she was and how they treated her was devastating. The tension grew as I quietly arranged moments where their hypocrisy could speak for itself. Invitations overlapped. Conversations were nudged. I watched as they contradicted themselves, praised values they didn't live by, dismissed people they relied on. I didn't interfere, I observed. I tested small moves. A private confrontation here, a simple question there. I recorded their reactions, not their words, but their expressions when they realized they weren't untouchable. The arrogance cracked just enough to let fear through. My auntie noticed me changing. She watched me longer, asked fewer questions. One evening, she said softly, "You're carrying something heavy." I met her eyes and answered honestly, "I know what I'm doing." She nodded. She trusted me. That trust became my responsibility. With every step forward, the risk increased. One mistake could drag her back into ridicule, could turn this into another reason for them to laugh. I felt the pressure constantly, like a hand at my throat. And yet, every time I sensed that social hierarchy tightening around her again, threatening to crush her dignity the way it always had, my resolve only hardened. They had mistaken her silence for weakness. I was about to prove how wrong they were. The call came late at night, unexpected and sharp. A former ally of the socialite's voice trembled as she spoke. "You don't know the half of it," she said. "Everything she shows the world, her charm, her generosity, it's all a mask. She's been deceiving everyone for years." I froze, heart pounding, as details unfolded. Hidden financial mismanagement, subtle social manipulations, favors traded under false pretenses, all carefully concealed beneath a veneer of elegance. The hypocrisy was staggering. The woman who had mocked my auntie's simplicity had built her entire reputation on lies. I turned to my auntie. She had been quiet through my planning, almost hesitant to step into this fight. But now she looked me square in the eyes and said, "I want to be part of this. I won't just watch anymore." Her voice, calm yet resolute, sent a shiver down my spine. She was reclaiming her own voice, her own agency. In that moment, I realized this wasn't simply about revenge anymore. This was about restoring her dignity, her legacy, everything the world had tried to erode. Her worth was not up for debate. It was waiting to be acknowledged. The perfect opportunity arrived sooner than expected. The socialite announced a lavish public gala, flaunting the very arrogance and self-importance that had humiliated my auntie. She had no idea what was coming. I dug deeper, uncovering hidden testimonies from others she had belittled over the years. Stories of humiliation, small betrayals, quiet shame. They were ready to corroborate every claim, every hidden truth. The pieces were falling into place. My auntie, once quiet and reserved, shared her own stories, the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the compromises made so my life could flourish. Her voice carried weight now, and I realized the emotional depth we could bring to the confrontation would leave no room for doubt or dismissal. We planned meticulously. Every timing, every placement, every public detail accounted for. A single misstep could ruin everything. But the strategy felt like armor, protecting her while exposing the truth. The power shift was palpable. The socialite, oblivious to our preparations, strutted through her world of elegance and self-assurance, unaware that her carefully constructed facade was about to collapse. As the day of reckoning approached, the tension was electric. This was no longer about a single insult or fleeting embarrassment. This was justice in its rawest form, calculated, public, undeniable. The air itself seemed to hum with anticipation, each heartbeat echoing the storm about to break. The gala glittered with opulence, chandeliers casting fractured light across polished marble floors, but my focus was on the room itself, on the faces, the smiles, the arrogance that had humiliated my auntie just days ago. I moved carefully, discreetly placing the evidence where it would be seen at the perfect moment. Financial statements manipulated to mislead. Photos capturing every moment of her false bravado, small but telling details exposing the socialite's arrogance. At first, nothing happened. Laughter echoed as glasses clinked, but then a subtle shift began. Whispers replaced the merriment. Voices low, uncertain. I watched as her confident mask, the one she wore like armor, started to crack. A flicker of panic crossed her eyes as she realized the room's energy had changed. Then I stepped forward and introduced my auntie. She moved with quiet grace, radiant and dignified, her simple attire standing out not as weakness, but as a statement of authenticity. She held her head high, her presence commanding the room more than any designer gown ever could. In doubt, one by one, testimonials were read aloud from those the socialite had wronged over the years. Stories of quiet cruelty, belittling moments, and public shaming filled the air, echoing the long-suppressed truth of my auntie's life. Each voice added weight, exposing the hypocrisy hidden behind charm and wealth. Phones lifted, and social media lit up in real time. Posts that had once mocked her simplicity were reframed, now highlighting the contrast between the socialite's deceit and my auntie's integrity. The story went viral as whispers swelled into shocked murmurs, the room collectively acknowledging the injustice. So, legal documents surfaced, minor fraudulent acts the socialite had hoped would never see daylight. Her carefully curated image faltered, cracks deepening as the evidence stacked against her. The crowd, once ready to laugh at my auntie, now shifted its attention entirely to the one who had tried to humiliate her. Shock and shame replaced their previous amusement. My auntie stepped forward, calm and measured, voice steady and unwavering. "Authenticity is not a crime," she said. "Dignity is not determined by the opinions of the shallow. What we value, what we respect, is the truth of a person's character, not the labels they wear." Her words reverberated through the room, commanding respect, silencing any remaining scoffs. The socialite opened her mouth to deflect, but no one listened. Her allies shifted uncomfortably, distancing themselves without a word. Pride and superiority had no refuge here. Tears welled in my auntie's eyes, streaking down her cheeks, but they were not tears of humiliation. They were tears of triumph, relief, and the restoration of long-suppressed dignity. I stood back, recording every detail in my mind: the broken masks, the silent apologies, the undeniable vindication. Every look, every reaction, every quiet sigh of acknowledgement was etched into memory. This moment, cinematic, raw, unstoppable, would resonate far beyond the walls of that gala. The socialite disappeared from view, retreating from the public eye as whispers of her arrogance and deceit spread like wildfire. I watched from a distance as the consequences of her actions began to unfold, each revelation chipping away at the image she had carefully curated for years. Around my auntie, our circle of friends and family gathered, their faces warm, their voices filled with admiration. They celebrated her strength, her composure, the quiet dignity she had always carried, even when the world had mocked her. The room felt alive with respect, a stark contrast to the cold laughter that had greeted her days ago. I noticed it first in the way she walked, head held higher, shoulders squared, steps measured and confident. Her smile was brighter now, unburdened, radiating a sense of calm triumph. She moved through the crowd unaffected by superficial judgments, untouchable in her authenticity. Slowly, the emotional wounds we both carried began to heal. Her vindication brought relief to me as well, as if every insult that had once stung us both had been finally answered, and the weight of years of silent endurance was lifted. Apologies arrived quietly from those who had once mocked her. Faces that had once sneered now looked down in shame, whispers of regret replacing the arrogance that had once filled the room. Many avoided direct confrontation, unable to meet the gaze of the woman they had tried to diminish. The story did not stay confined to that night. Media coverage amplified it, framing her as a symbol of quiet resilience, a woman whose integrity and strength had finally triumphed over shallow cruelty. Articles and posts spread her story, celebrating not just her revenge, but the dignity that had been overlooked for so long. I sat back, reflecting on what had been achieved. This was more than revenge. This was societal recognition of her worth, a public acknowledgement of everything she had sacrificed, every quiet struggle she had endured. Justice in its purest form had been served. The tension that had built for weeks finally faded, replaced by a reflective relief. Pride replaced fear, calm replaced anger, and a sense of closure settled over both of us. I made sure every piece of evidence, every testimony, every documented moment was preserved, immortalizing the story for posterity. And my auntie, she embraced life anew, Freed from judgment, liberated from the weight of public mockery, she moved forward with authenticity, her presence commanding respect, untouched by shallow opinions, unshakable in her quiet, undeniable strength. I turned to the camera, my voice steady but charged with emotion, feeling the weight of everything we've been through. Sometimes, I begin, the world laughs at simplicity, but strength and honor always outshine mockery. I let the words sink in, letting viewers feel the gravity of what had transpired. Revenge isn't always cruel, it can be just, emotional, restorative, a way to reclaim what was stolen without losing yourself in bitterness. I emphasize that careful, thoughtful action can transform humiliation into vindication. Look around you, I continue. Recognize the quiet heroes in your lives, the ones who work, sacrifice, and endure without applause. Protect them, stand with them. A montage unfolds behind me, the before and after of my auntie. The hesitant, hurt woman at the gala earlier, shrinking under scrutiny. The radiant, composed figure standing proud after the confrontation. Her transformation is undeniable, a testament to resilience and dignity. I invite viewers to reflect, share your stories of hidden strength, of quiet victories, of vindication. There are so many untold tales waiting to be acknowledged. I pause, letting the message resonate. Standing up against cruelty isn't just about revenge. It restores balance, restores honor, restores emotional integrity. Every injustice documented, every truth revealed, whether online or offline, has power. It matters. It can change outcomes. The camera lingers on my auntie. She smiles softly, content, finally at peace. The tension that once clouded her eyes has vanished, replaced by quiet pride and serene confidence. As the scene fades, I speak once more, my voice gentle but firm. Resilience matters, dignity matters. Standing up for the people we love, even when the world laughs, is one of the strongest acts of all. The screen fades to black, leaving behind only the echo of courage, vindication, and the undeniable power of honoring those who endure with grace.